Coming.
Recording in progress.
I would like to call to order tonight's meeting of the Brentwood 353 Redevelopment Corporation. Would you please call the roll?
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims. Here. Alderman Plufka. Alderman Gould.
Here.
Tony Ponder, absent. Andy Burkemper, absent. With 5 members present, we have a quorum, so we can begin.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there a recommendation for approval or amendment to the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. Consent agenda, approval of meeting minutes from,
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
with consent, is there any opposition, correct? There isn't a yes or a no on a consent agenda item, right? It's just, yeah. Is there any objection? The item stands approved. Election of officers. I think I would turn to our staff for this if you wanted to, or actually I could do this first. Let me tell you who our current officers are. The president currently is myself, Sherry Bilderback. The vice president is Alderman Jeff Gould. The executive director is Whitney Kelly, who's our planning and zoning administrator for the city. The secretary treasurer is Bola Akanda, who's our city administrator. And the assistant secretary is Kelly, and she are you the city clerk? Is that your title?
Deputy City Clerk.
Deputy City Clerk, thank you. So would there be a recommendation for nomination of officers?
Any chance we could just move the slate as it currently exists? Because I'm great with, I would make that motion.
I second it.
I think that this requires a roll call vote.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Plufka. Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Sherry, you don't vote. So by a vote of 4-0, that motion carries.
Mantle is yours.
I'm so excited. Let me just get this gavel out. I'm just kidding. I never use the gavel. All right, so new business, economic development, sales tax, income statement. Who from the city would like to talk to us about that?
I would like to introduce Michelle Depew. She's our new finance director, and she will present the economic development sales tax.
Thank you.
A year and counting. Good evening. And board docs, you'll find the audited financials, and this is page 24 out of the 2023 audit that indicated the status of the Economic Development Fund and all of the other funds, but that one in particular. And then its growth and sort of its revenue and its expenditures and how it grew over $1 million within 2023. It's changed slightly in 2024 as the board did approve taking about $2.8 million out of this reserve balance of 5.3 to purchase a facility in Hanley Station and the industrial park for the future Public Works garage. So there has been some movement within this type of fund, but it continues to remain healthy. Any immediate questions?
Any questions from the board?
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anything further on that subject?
That's
Whitney?
all we have.
Okay, great. So we're going to go on to the next agenda item, which is Brentwood Bound and Destination Playground.
So Eric will discuss the destination playground, but the Brentwood project is expected to be completed by the end of the year. The playground opened on April 6th. So Eric did meet with some representative of Placer AI, and he can tell you about their findings.
let the record show that Mr. Andy Burkhamper has arrived for the meeting.
So, yeah, staff met with Placer AI, which is a location analytics platform that helps basically consumer looks at insights to consumer behavior, analyzing foot traffic, and those type of things. And so, part of what they did, they wanted basically to sell the city on this platform, and so they wanted to do a presentation. And I said, hey, I've been looking for some data for Brentwood Park, so why don't you give it to me? So they came and gave us a nice presentation. And one of the things that they showed is over the past 12 months, we've had 998,000 visits from 619 unique visitors. So that's averaging about 5,000 a month or 5,000 visitors a week. And obviously it jumped up incredibly in April. So as soon as we opened up in April, you kind of saw about a couple hundred a day to about 5,000, 7,000 a week. So the playground's been it's done very well. Our event pavilion and our pavilion in the playground has also done very well as far as rentals for this year. Our destination playground pavilion was rented out every weekend from June through October. So it's been busy, but we continue to get wonderful reports about families and people coming and using not only the playground, but the rest of the park.
So included in your packet, I did provide the heat map that they provided to Eric that shows the market, the area market that are coming to the park. And it's pretty interesting. I unfortunately can't pull it up, but you can see it here. And we're pulling from as far out as Wentzville and Moscow Mills. And it's, very exciting.
Yeah, the thing that, as far as the heat map, the things we're kind of excited about is when we talked about this park years ago, we talked about it being a regional destination. And I think we've proved, and the heat map shows that it really is. They expand this out. We've had the furthest dot away was LA, and these people obviously travel, but we actually got a little bit of some green and yellow up to Springfield, even up to Chicago, which means it's at least multiple people coming through. So it is something that is being noticed not only regionally but across the Midwest.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of discussion, obviously, on like online platforms that are not official city platforms regarding parking and all of that. And the city went out of its way to create additional parking lots. And that seems to be really working from what I can tell. I haven't been personally utilizing the park and utilizing the parking, but I was wondering how that is working, particularly now for folks who are renting the event space.
It seems to be going really well. Once we put those temporary parking lots in, we saw usage move over, especially during special events. What we have seen and what we have heard just from people who will talk to us is that the temporary parking lots are becoming more of a Mid-County, Brentwood, Maplewood, Richmond Heights. They know that's the place to go and park. That way they don't have to deal with the stuff, the main parking lot. I mean, the parking lot still gets busy on the weekends still. Right now, obviously, during school week, we haven't seen that much usage during the middle of the day. A lot of little kids, grandparents, stay-at-home parents, things like that. So, but we're not seeing the type of usage we saw over the summer. We did institute a new parking practice for the event pavilion, and that seemed to go well. We didn't get any sort of feedback, good or bad. It's just that people who use it are happy, and we continue to look at other things, including additional parking on Brazil. So we'll continue to look at that.
Okay, great.
And even better is by the end of next month, we continue to be told that the light at Brazil and Brentwood Boulevard will be installed and complete. So all that parking on Russell becomes a lot more convenient with a light and sidewalk across.
And that would be all consistent also with what I'd noticed in the conversations online. There were no more complaints about it that I saw. Like, I kind of tracked that, so that was fantastic. So I thought that's probably what you would say. Yep. Other questions from the board? Alderman Plufka?
Thank you. Have you shared this activity data with Halo?
Not at this time, because again, this was just a pretty small report, and not something official yet. I'm excited about the data because I've seen it, but until we actually can't actually utilize it a whole lot until we're part of that platform. I think.
Yeah, I imagine it would be of some interest.
Yeah. It's kind of, they do other things. They talk about the places that people go, restaurants they'll go to after the park, and the top two are McDonald's on Hanley and Chick-fil-A. Shocking. So we're starting to see that data too. So it's exciting what this can do. We actually the staff has a full presentation by Placer in October at a staff meeting.
Are the plans for, I know that the two lots we're talking about that straddle either side of Manchester Road are temporary. There's been some discussion about a more permanent solution. That's still scheduled for sometime in 2025, or?
Yeah, well, right now we're getting design done. So drawings, I just came through my desk. I'm actually looking at them this week, and so once we get through with that, we'll have have more discussions on that. The new parking lot on Brentwood is part of my 2025 capital project. So we're hoping to do that as well. But we'll continue to look at those temporary parking lots, the need for them, and come back to the board for approval for additional time if we need it, if we feel like we need it. And so I think until we see that additional the second parking lot come online, we'll ask for another 6 months of temporary parking at those two lots.
You're welcome. Oh, yes, Alderwoman Sims.
So I read the report. So they're tracking our phones to find out that I drove from Chicago to go to the park and then went to McDonald's afterwards.
That is how this works, yes. And
I'm a
ultimately, they
trucker,
don't track
so-
every phone in America. I forgot the specific exact, but Placer IA, what they did is they're one of the first in the market, and they basically took 3 years to really develop the platform. And so they feel like their confidence on their data is about the 95 to 96%.
I should add that data similar to this is what PGAV has been providing the city in the analysis of how much economic development sales tax we should expect. So this is just a new company in the market. So there are many options, but we have used PGAV for similar information in the past.
Thank you.
Alderman Gould.
So do we anticipate, what's the cost to subscribe to this, and do we anticipate a need for that? Or is this just kind of an interesting exercise that was done?
I mean, when you talk about location analytics, I mean, it is kind of a way for many people to kind of find that type of data coming in the future. It is something that's still, I don't want to say in its infancy, they've been around for a while, but it is something that more and more municipalities are starting to use. Again, they came across the city. I got to be the guinea pig. It was really interesting. I see it as not only useful for data-driven stuff for parks, but also economic development, showing the trends of where people are going as they come into the city, where they're stopping, if they're going to a certain restaurant outside the city. Like one of the sit-down restaurants that people go to after leaving the park, according to this report, is Texas Roadhouse in Kirkwood. So does that show a need that maybe there's a more upscale steak location that may be needed? I mean, those are the type of things you can derive from this. The cost is I have a phone call next week to talk about the cost prior to our meeting with staff. Again, this was more than anything else, more just kind of interesting data, but the more discussion about whether or not it's purposeful for the city will come after we have that larger discussion.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, I find it, with such an increase of population, traffic, and density, having seen some of the police reports, it doesn't seem like we've had a major jump in incidents. As we look at those, it'd be interesting if we correlated and looked at those and said, okay, from the time that we opened were we managing the traffic patterns and everything pretty well? Seemed like, it doesn't seem like there was a significant increase in, at least in the data reports that we've seen from our ward meetings and everything since this period.
Correct. And I think part of it is the patrolling the police department's doing in that area within the parks, the park units. They're also making sure that people aren't parking on Brazos, and I think that's been handled a lot better. And people are understanding that there are multiple places you can park and just not in front of the homes of Brazos.
Great.
Piggybacking on that just for a second, anecdotally, watching those same social media sites that I mentioned earlier, I mean, no one's mentioned it. So just from the standpoint of what the public is saying about it, everything that I've read has been positive, and I haven't read anything about like from people in their personal experience. You know, we have the data and then we have the people's perception or experience, and I haven't seen that change at all. And then relative to the data, I was going to say the same thing on economic development. You know, when we're talking about doing projects here and attracting the right folks, and what are the types of businesses that we want to bring into the city to serve our residents and to provide those services, and also, of course, to further along our positive tax and income flow for the city. That type of data could be really interesting to potential developers. And then it makes me think of someone like John, who's the planner that we've worked with on like big projects and things over the couple decades that this board has been around, that those are pieces and tools that could be used to, pitch these things when you go out to try to put out an RFP for a project or something like that. Not that there's anything in the works, mind you, but just kind of thinking creatively about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're still kind of in the early stages of this conversation about this type of data. I mean, I think all of us look toward data to make good decisions, and this is just another tool that can be used, not only for things like that. I mean, they can track traffic patterns on different streets. So if we see, just for example, High School Drive gets used 30% more than other streets, maybe that's a street that gets redone first. When we look at street repairs and stuff like that, that's sort of the data we can look at beyond just economic development. I like the idea of sponsorships as well. If we're showing correlation to people coming to the park, to a restaurant they go to afterwards, we can show them that data and say, hey, maybe we can get a little bit more. Or below, it's like, hey, people are going to Kirkwood out of their way to get to this restaurant. Maybe if you sponsor with us, you can, those type of things is what I'm looking at as well. So again, I didn't mean for this to come into a whole sort of AI discussion, but more than anything else, it was interesting what we've seen on the park, which is what we've been anecdotally seeing ourselves, but it's kind of nice to have that data behind it.
I had worked on a major project that had like a global response in my personal life. And we did a lot of things like with geofencing and data tracking and targeting and all of that. And I mean, we're talking, it was a global infrastructure project. So I think that, and that was like, I don't know, 7 years ago. It was really incredibly valuable. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I mean, basically what they do is they geofence a certain location, and that's how they derive their data, is people going in and then out of that geofence. Exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Ultimately, they did a nice job on Brentwood Park. They didn't get the whole park. They didn't get the whole trail down through the Sycamore Trail all the way down to Hanley. So they lost some of those data points going that way. So that's why I'm not saying it's perfect yet. But again, what they had is pretty good.
Thank you. Alderman Luckmiller.
Erica, maybe you know this, and it wasn't in this scope, but how are people way out in Moscow Mills or over in Illinois hearing about this? Was it social media? Was it print?
It's a lot of things. I mean, our marketing staff has done a really nice job going back to the opening of the park, all the way to here, of getting the word out. We've seen a lot of great response in social media, social influencer partnerships, and people that we've known about and gave early tours of the playground to just different people who just showed up and just talked beautifully about the park, to things like the St. Louis Business Journal, who did a nice article, to Channel 5. So all of that sort of spread out. Anecdotally, we had a staff member who has family in Chicago, and they saw a news story, on a 5 o'clock news story about the playground. I was like, hey, if you're ever in St. Louis, Missouri, go to Brentwood and come to this playground. So it's gotten some reach, which is nice, which is what we talked about when we had this harebrained idea of making this park from floodplain. And it's wonderful to see that it's turning into what it has.
I would also think along those lines, the partnership with Great Rivers Greenway, I mean, that's huge, right? I mean, all the folks that are interested in that type of thing track what they're doing. They've done an amazing PR job ever since they were instituted. It's been a really long time ago now, so I think that probably plays into it a little bit
I
too.
want to acknowledge Mayor Dimmitt. He's also done a fantastic job of being accessible to the local media. You know, whether it's TV, radio, print, he's been a great ambassador for the city, as the alderman and all of you as well. So I think it takes a joint effort.
The mayor's done a great job with that, for sure.
I continue to get asked to do presentations about Brentwood Bound and everything else, and it's just a wonderful story to talk about how a community could handle a water issue, a flooding issue, and then turn it into something that is workable and turn it into a place that people want to come to and make it usable. So it continues to be a wonderful story that we will continue to tell, hopefully, until I retire.
It's the type of thing that you would get asked to speak to at development conferences, environmental conferences, all that kind of stuff is kind of a case study of how you can do this unique partnership and how you can take it on yourself as a community to make it happen. Because it really is like groundbreaking, absolutely.
Yep.
So
We're going to ask for a lot of those.
we'll toot your horn for you. Any other guests? Andy?
So I have, well, first of all, I guess I'm from Moscow Mills, so maybe I'm the one taking that somehow, if they go all the way back to when you were born.
Gotta turn your mic on.
Isn't it? It's on. It's just, I'm not speaking into it, I guess. A couple questions about the parking. So do we, I guess we have some kind, it sounds like we have some kind of data on how those new lots, or all the lots, I guess, the temporary ones and the main one are getting used. And so, you know, are we still seeing those temporary ones being used even when the other one is not full?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think people have decided, you know, where they want to park when they come to Brentwood Park. And so you have some people who always want to park there because, again, the one that's adjacent to the actual park, it is really a 2-minute walk to the playground. It's no different than just being there. And some people coming from Maplewood, they're just like, I'd rather just park here, get on the trail for a couple seconds. It's closer to where I come. I don't have to come all the way around.
Yeah.
Right. I think what we see more of the people who, if there's anyone who's upset, it's still the people who come from outside the mid-county area, Wentzville, Moscow Mills. Thank you very much, Andy. All those people coming in, they're just plugging in the address of the GPS and it's taking them to the main parking lot. Yeah. We still have, you know, QR codes up that kind of direct you to other places if you need to. That seemed to work. We see hits. Our marketing person continues to track how many people are going to that site of the website, and we're still getting, you know, a handful of people a week still. When we first went up, we were probably getting 100 a week, and now it's dwindling down to about 10 to 15 a week. So people are still using it, which is good. Again, it's right now, it's hard to kind of say because there's a lot less usage during the day. So the parking lot's okay. You know, I like to go through videos over the weekend. We had a huge sort of influx Saturday morning for the run. It's wonderful. The middle school had a tremendous run. They loved it. I thought it was just a really good location and everything else worked out really well. Saw a little bit of a break, and then just that second wave of cars came through. We track other things, Google Analytics, stuff like that. And again, we continue to get high marks. The last bad review we got was a 4-star review, which was, came to the park, loved the park. It was unfortunate that the water had been shut off. 4 stars. Like, all right, it's September. It's late September. We have to turn off the water sometime.
So is it sounds like are you still seeing a need for, like, where the main parking lot does fill up and there is need for that overflow? Or is it just kind of, you know, shifting? Because I'm sure a lot of the demand initially was because of that first opening, you know, grand opening kind of high traffic times, and probably subsided.
But ultimately, I still see the need of doing a secondary parking lot on Brentwood for a couple of reasons. It's one, I have some wonderful staff and vicious staff who continue to look at bringing some wonderful events to that park and to the region. The Wine Whiskey Walk has been a wonderful event. And so as you do those type of events, you bring in a more regional crowd who aren't as used to where to park as other people. And so getting that influx there to make sure there's some place for them to park. Secondarily, we continue to see usage of the event pavilion and the playground pavilion. So that brings in just an influx of people at a certain time, and having that other parking lot right across the street would be beneficial, even though we have the stuff down Manchester. Ultimately, again, we're supposed to have hopefully a surface parking lot as part of the redevelopment, and that will help. But even that, if that hopefully is as successful as the park is, we'll still need parking.
That's what I was kind of wondering, yeah, when hopefully this all gets redeveloped. I think that was the relief valve planned was
Yes.
all that would be, that permanent parking part of the development would be part of it. So I was just wondering how permanent, is it still going to be sort of a semi-permanent potentially if you do choose to do that, or would it, ultimately, would it potentially be developed later if that had more parking?
Yeah, ultimately, the 2 spots that we have temporary parking is part of the redevelopment. So as the discussion of redevelopment comes forward, then those discussions will take place.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent work. Other business, scheduling our next meeting date. And I also would like to say something regarding our next meeting date. We haven't discussed the redevelopment area really since last July as a board. And I would like to see us talk about it, have an update, also have our city attorney, Kevin O'Keefe, come in. I'd like to kind of talk about where we are now with timeframes, given recent developments, how we see things kind of playing out, and making sure that we do our due diligence for our piece and kind of looking forward, depending on what happens in the future. And maybe we could talk about then at some point, if it makes sense, to try to come up with a situation where we could have John come back if that was deemed appropriate or if we needed to, but starting with the city attorney first. That would be something that I would like to do. I don't know if the board has any thoughts or any other feelings about that. Sometime over the next couple of months, it doesn't have to be tomorrow. I just want to see you guys. I'm just kidding. All right, so with that, what do you guys think as far as? Okay.
So, yeah, we can certainly poll for a future meeting and get with our attorney when he might be available. And then the next annual meeting, September meeting, is September 23rd, 2025. But within the next month, hopefully by the end, not the next month, but maybe by the end of the year, we will poll everybody and see about having that meeting for you.
Do you need a motion to set the next annual meeting for September 25th or 23rd?
No, it's just more up to
Okay.
date. Yeah.
It's just an update, okay.
Yeah.
I'm putting that in my calendar right now. Hang on a second.
And you'll circulate note reminders as the date approaches.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and if we could, just because I know the attorney's very busy, and obviously we have a lot of different city meetings and things like that to coordinate around. If we could start now to get that scheduled for our next meeting, I would really appreciate it.
Okay.
So we could get it on the calendar, you know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. Citizen comments. Would anyone in the audience or we have Zoom tonight?
Yeah, there's no one online.
No one's online? Would anyone in the audience like to make any comments or questions? Okay. All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.